There comes a split second, almost invisible, when someone throws an accusation at you. They question your character, your motives, even your very worth. And in that instant, the ordinary person reacts the way they've been trained since childhood. They defend. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. I swear, I'm not like that. It sounds noble. It sounds reasonable. But to Machiavelli, that's the moment you lose everything. Because the second you start explaining yourself, you've already admitted weakness. And in the realm of power, perception is reality. The moment they see you flinch, they don't see innocence. They smell blood. This is the brutal law Machiavelli grasped centuries before anyone else. The man who defends himself lowers himself. The one who refuses to explain forces the entire world to explain him. Understand this. Self-defense almost never convinces anyone. What it really does is hand control over to the accuser. The instant you justify your behavior, you step into their arena. You accept their frame. And without even knowing it, you're saying, "You have the authority to question me." That is the true surrender. Because once they seize the frame, they seize the narrative. Even if you're right, you look guilty. Only the weak scramble to explain. The strong let silence burn. They let accusations hang in the air, untouched, because they know the real move is to turn the attack into a mirror. Make the accuser look emotional, unstable, obsessed. Because whoever speaks first usually loses control of the frame. And Machiavelli knew, whoever owns the frame owns the outcome. Most people defend themselves because they crave understanding. They believe that if they explain enough, clarify enough, repeat enough, they'll finally be vindicated. But that impulse comes from emotional fragility, not strategy. You don't want clarity. You want control. Clarity belongs to therapy. Control belongs to power. And power doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being feared, respected, untouchable. So when someone calls you arrogant, cold, selfish, manipulative, and you rush to say, "No, you don't get it," you've already lost. Because now you're reacting. Now you're proving you care. Now you've placed the ball squarely in their court. And in doing so, you've thrown away the most Machiavellian weapon you had: mystery. Think about the most powerful people you've ever encountered. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the most loved. They were the ones who used silence like a blade. The ones who made you second-guess yourself with nothing more than a glance. The ones who never flinched when attacked. Machiavelli would tell you this. The explainer submits. The silent one forces the world to fill in the blanks, and people almost always overestimate him. That's the game. When you don't react, they squirm. They start doubting their own words. They seek reassurance and find none. Suddenly, their power collapses, while yours expands. Because you've done the one thing the emotional mind cannot endure. You made them argue with themselves. And that is how you flip the board. You let their accusations die in the echo chamber of their own weakness. Picture this. You walk into a room. A remark gets tossed your way. Maybe it's a sly jab about your success, your attitude, or some shadow from your past. Every eye turns to you, waiting for your reaction. And your move is this: nothing. No defense, no retaliation, no smirk, just stillness, absolute composure. In that instant, you are untouchable. Because everyone in that room is forced to ask themselves, why isn't he reacting? Does he know something we don't? Is he above all this? Did that insult just make him stronger? With one act of silence, you've inverted the entire social frame. The room is no longer focused on the attack. They're focused on you. And silence, when backed by presence, speaks louder than any justification ever could. Machiavelli knew this. He wasn't just a student of politics. He was a surgeon of psychology. He understood what most people never will. Power is not what you say. Power is what people believe you could say, but choose not to. Now here's the coldest move of all. Sometimes you don't merely ignore an accusation, you flip it. Someone calls you manipulative, and instead of explaining, you just smile faintly, glance away, and say, "If that's how you see it." No defense, no apology, just calm neutrality. What happens next? They stumble. They expected a fight. They expected you to flinch. Instead, they're left alone with their own weapon. And that's when the guilt sets in. They start wondering, did I push too far? Did I embarrass myself? Do I look insecure right now? And the answer is yes. You've stripped the energy out of their attack and forced them to carry it themselves. There comes a moment when silence becomes unbearable, not for you, but for them, because they wanted reaction. Instead, they looked desperate. They thought they were the accuser. Now they're exposed as the one begging for attention. And you? You've become something far more powerful than innocent. You've become untouchable. Machiavelli grasped what almost no one else does. Words are rarely used to clarify truth. They're used to distort it. When someone strikes at you, subtle or direct, they're trying to drag you into the fog of explanation. They want you tangled in emotional defenses. Because the more you explain, the more uncertain you look. So instead, let them talk. Let them fill the silence. Watch as they overplay, repeat themselves, grow desperate, emotional, unstable. You don't say a word, but now they're the one on trial. Because the crowd isn't listening to content, they're watching composure. Who stays calm and who unravels. That is social power. And it doesn't come from being right. It comes from being beyond reach. Imagine you are in a business meeting. Someone takes a subtle shot at you. Maybe they say, "I'm not sure that strategy was fully thought through." Or, "He always comes up with bold ideas like that." They are fishing for a reaction. They want you to bite. And what do most people do? They lean forward. They explain. They defend. They clarify. And in doing so, they look nervous. The entire room can smell it. But a Machiavellian operator leans back. He waits. Maybe he even allows a faint smirk. And if he chooses to speak, it is never in defense. It is a pivot. Then let's hear your strategy. Now the attacker is forced into the spotlight. The room shifts. Suddenly they are the one being measured. They are the one under pressure. Because silence, when it comes from someone confident, is a silent indictment. It makes others feel small without you lifting a finger. In romance or personal relationships, this becomes even more dangerous. Imagine your partner says, "You don't care about me anymore." The ordinary person panics. They rush to explain, to reassure, to defend. And in doing so, they confirm the emotional frame. The Machiavellian response is different. You do not deny. You do not argue. You let the weight of the accusation hang in the air. You let them hear the echo of their own drama. Then, calmly, you respond, "That is not how I see it." Short, steady, without justification, without apology. Now they feel uncertain. They begin to doubt their own tone. They wonder if they overreacted. Because in that moment you control the most important element of the exchange, the tempo. And whoever controls the tempo controls the frame. But there is a deeper tactic, colder than all the rest. Do not only stay calm when accused. Vanish. Someone insults you and you do not answer. You do not respond. You do not even acknowledge. And you do not block them either. You leave them alone with the silence of being ignored. That silence becomes a mirror. It breaks people in two ways. First, they realize you do not even consider them worthy of a response. Second, they begin spinning stories inside their own head. And most of the time, those stories eat them alive. Why? Because ordinary people feed on emotional validation. Even in conflict, they need confirmation. If you take that away, they wither. They spiral. They post more. They talk to others. They try again and again to lure you into reacting. And every attempt makes them look weaker, more obsessed, more unstable. Meanwhile, you remain motionless. And that is when you win. Not because you proved anything, but because they destroyed themselves trying to make you move. This is where the game moves to a higher level. Instead of defending yourself against an attack, you make their accusation look like weakness. Someone calls you arrogant. You reply, "Strange how confidence unsettles people." Someone says you are manipulative. You answer, "Only those who cannot be influenced ever say that." Someone calls you fake. You respond, "That is what people always say when they stop getting what they want." You are not denying the accusation. You are flipping it into their insecurity. And now, they are the ones scrambling to explain themselves. This is more than deflection. It is power judo. You take the force of their emotion and turn it into their public collapse. Machiavelli would call this the blade twist. Do not meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on his own steel. The world teaches you to protect your reputation, to explain yourself, to clear your name. But Machiavelli saw the trap. He understood that the moment you chase innocence, you admit guilt. That is why a true strategist never plays that game. He appears too steady to be shaken, too elevated to be bothered, too certain of his position to explain. And slowly, those who try to tear him down begin to look unstable, reactive, jealous, weak. The more you defend, the more you look like you need to. The more you ignore, the more they assume you are dangerous. And it is that assumption where real power is born. Most people think power is about proving yourself, proving you are right, proving you are not what they say, proving you are better than their perception. Machiavelli would smirk at such naivety. Because the moment you try to prove anything, you admit that someone else's judgment matters. And when you grant someone that validation, you hand them the chain. Picture yourself at a table, a social gathering, a group discussion. Someone throws a jab in front of everyone. You always act like you know everything. Oh, that is just how he is. Humility must not be your strong suit. How do most people respond? They tense up. They try to laugh it off. Or worse, they explain themselves, hoping to smooth things over, believing they are saving face. But what they are really doing is proving that the jab landed. And now the crowd is not focused on the joke itself. They are watching the self-defense, and that alone makes the jab appear true. This is what a Machiavellian mind does instead. Pause. Hold silence for just 2 seconds. Let your eyes sweep the room, not with aggression but with quiet amusement. Then, and only if necessary, deliver something calm, precise, and dismissive. "You seem emotional today." Or, "Interesting opinion." Or, say nothing at all. Just hold the gaze, steady and unbroken. What happens next is predictable. The attacker stumbles, they fidget, they search for support, they scramble to explain their joke. They feel the heat of the room turning against them, because your lack of reaction has already told everyone something louder than words ever could. You are not the one on trial, they are. In the digital arena, this escalates even faster. Comments, posts, call-outs, private messages. People bait you to react. Here is the truth Machiavelli would carve into your mind. In the court of public opinion, silence equals guilt, unless your silence commands fear. Which is why the strategy is this. When attacked online, do not defend, do not explain, distort. You do not address the accusation. You redirect the energy back to the crowd. Someone calls you toxic or manipulative. Instead of posting a tearful defense or a long clarification, you write, "They always call you dangerous when they cannot control you." What just happened? You did not defend yourself. You reframed the attack into a badge of power. Now they look bitter. You look untouchable. And the audience, they start to wonder who really holds control. That is not damage control. That is narrative domination. Make it sharper. There are 3 tools you can use instead of self-defense. Silence, cold, steady, powerful, forcing your accuser into the spotlight. Redirection, shaping the frame without admitting the jab. Precision cuts, short truths that end the game instantly. Someone says, "You are too arrogant." You answer, "Confidence unsettles the insecure." They say, "You are fake." You answer, "I do not owe you authenticity." They say, "You think you are better than everyone." You answer, "No, I just do not think like everyone." These are not defenses, they are declarations of status. They do not say, "I am innocent." They say, "You cannot touch me." And that is the essence. The Machiavellian does not beg to be seen as good. He dares people to see him as bad and stands taller because of it. When you refuse to defend yourself, something strange happens to your enemy. They grow unstable because they expected a fight, and instead they are swinging their sword into smoke. They escalate. They push harder. They grow more dramatic. They reveal more of their own insecurity. And the more they do it, the higher you rise in the eyes of others. Why? Because you have forced them to perform their own downfall. This is the Machiavellian endgame. You do not destroy your enemies. You let their obsession with you destroy them. You think being misunderstood is dangerous, but being predictable is far worse. The misunderstood carry mystery. The predictable can be manipulated. Those who explain everything are seen as desperate. Those who stay calm while being misunderstood are feared. Machiavelli understood this truth. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Yet even more dangerous than fear is confusion. The confused man is cautious. He watches you carefully. He does not act recklessly, and that means you control the game. Shatter the final illusion. You do not need a good reputation to win. You need a strong one. The man with a good reputation is expected to be pure, agreeable, harmless. The man with a strong reputation is not always liked, not always trusted, but never attacked lightly. This is what happens when you refuse to defend yourself. Your reputation is not what people believe. It is what they fear you might do next. That is how you flip the board. You stop fighting for approval. Instead, you create an aura that forces caution. Even your silence feels like a decision. And every move you do not make becomes a move in their imagination. The final evolution is not silence. It is aura. A presence so calm, so secure, so far above the noise that accusations evaporate before they even touch the ground. This does not come from lack of emotion. It comes from mastery over distraction. Once you have trained yourself not to defend, not to explain, not to seek validation, you have crossed a boundary. A boundary where your existence itself becomes your defense. And that is the moment when power becomes effortless. Think of the people in your life who never feel the need to explain themselves. They do not post long defenses. They do not polish their profiles. They do not argue with critics. Yet everyone treats them with more respect. Why is that? Because silence in the face of accusation breeds legend. It invites interpretation. And the human mind, when not given an explanation, fills the void with power. People assume you must be dangerous. They assume you know something they do not. They assume you are so secure in yourself that a challenge does not even cause a blink. That assumption is what makes people follow you. Machiavelli did not care about being liked. He cared about control. The one who never defends always controls perception, even when surrounded by lies. Here is the paradox. The more you explain yourself, the more isolated you appear. No one rushes to your side when you are busy defending. But if you remain calm, if you stand silent and unshaken, others start to feel the urge to protect you. They say, "That was out of line." They say, "He does not deserve that." They say, "Why attack him when he will not even react?" And you keep going. Suddenly they become your shield. And what is better than defending yourself? Letting other people defend you without asking them to. That is Machiavellian leverage. Let the crowd explain you while you remain above the noise. Now you are not merely respected, you are elevated. This does not happen overnight. You build it like a fortress, stone by deliberate stone. Act with restraint. Choose silence over reaction. Never explain more than necessary. Start here. Never correct an insult meant to provoke. Let it stand. Let it echo. Your silence tells the room that the attack did not even register. Respond to indirect barbs with calm puzzlement, not outrage. Is that how you see it? You ask with absolute serenity. That question drains the emotional charge from their attack. Use brief closing phrases instead of long defenses. Noted. Okay. Think what you will. Time will answer. Each phrase shuts the door. Each one ends the scene. Train these moves until they become your reflex. When someone pushes, do less. When they prod, pause longer. Let others supply the energy they hope to extract from you. Watch them escalate into obsession while you remain still. The crowd will shift their gaze from the accusation to the accused and then to those who observe the scene. They will fill the silence with explanations that make the accuser look small, vain, and needy. That is the subtle art. That is the conversion of attack into armor. Remember this. Mystery is currency. Predictability is vulnerability. A person wrapped in mystery forces others to guess, to admire, to fear. That fear is more useful than being universally liked. It buys you breathing room, options, and the quiet ability to move without interference. The goal is not to be innocent or to be loved. The goal is to be unassailable enough that even insults fall short of hurting you. Keep your answers short. Keep your presence steady. Let the world tell stories about you while you remain the author of the atmosphere. Study how you hold your face, your body, your eyes. The Machiavellian never twitches, never flinches, never tightens. Silence is his armor. The calmer you remain while others lose control, the more your power quietly expands. When people cannot find a pressure point to provoke you, they fear you, because you become unreadable. Not erratic, but inscrutable. A mirror reflecting their own instability back at them. Machiavelli might say, "The most dangerous man is not the one who strikes first. He is the one who never needs to strike." You will reach a point where assaults stop, not because you fought them off, but because people know they will fail before they begin. Your presence says, "I do not play defense. I allow others to destroy themselves, trying to close in on me." There is a gap between force and immunity. Force still reacts. Force still shows feeling even as it fights. Immunity simply does not acknowledge the blow. That is Machiavelli's ideal. You do not win an argument by arguing. You end it before it starts by never needing to reply. When you no longer defend, people stop treating you as someone to be tried. You are not in their league. You have transcended the court of public approval. The only judgment that matters is your own. From that moment on, you stop living in defense and start living in definition. You define your image. You define your tone. You define the meaning of your silence. People feel it. They read the certainty behind your eyes, the steadiness in your posture, the threat in your calm. You no longer resist, you command, and the room changes. Conversation tightens. Your adversaries fall quiet. Your name gains weight. Not because you fought for it, but because you never explained it. Never defending does not mean never speaking. It means speaking only when your words shift the balance of power. When you speak, it must land as a move, not a reaction. Every time you refrain from explaining, every time you remain still while the world unravels, you become what they cannot control. A person who answers no one.